Fire versus ice, life versus death, light versus darkness. Everything is coming to a head now. And oh boy, I can't even talk about how amazing this episode was. Welcome to the heart of the stories we tell. My name is Rob, and tonight I will be reviewing episode 6 of season 7, Beyond the Wall. People talk about predictability, and I could have told you several bits of this was going to happen. I even knew pretty clearly that the Night King was going to do what he did. But oh man, seeing it on screen was amazing! If this is your first time here, I do Game of Thrones reviews along with theory videos on all sorts of storytelling things. Hit that subscribe button and enable alerts if you want to hear my crazy ideas of what it means to be a storyteller, along with some of my crazy ideas of where stories are going and how stories work. But before we get into that, there is nothing I can say that isn't spoilerific this week, because oh my god, my brain is blown as both a book reader and a TV show watcher. So, we're throwing this up there and just saying point blank, if you don't know everything about the TV show up till now, there be spoilers here. Now, this is a show that's been made famous for death of characters, so we knew this was going to have death of characters. And you know what? We didn't actually end up too bad when it comes to how many characters died tonight. I was actually pleasantly surprised that we didn't lose more. Although, that's not to say we didn't lose any. And of course, we're going to start with the elephant/dragon in the room. We lost one of the dragons. And we didn't just lose him. See, this is the problem with fighting necromancers. Every time you kill someone, you not just subtract from one side of the army, you add to the other. And the question of whether or not they could raise a dragon has been brought up many times. And now we know. There be an ice dragon coming. That's not to say that tonight's episode was perfect, though. There were a few things that I felt were miss on the hit or miss scale. In general, I like the way they portray women, both in the book and on the show. Strong, fierce, being able to be in a bunch of different types of heroes. But I have to say that the show let me down a little in that regard when it came to the Stark women. But we're not going to start there. Instead, we're going to start with the most powerful badass of the women, Emilia Clarke's Daenerys, who, let's be honest, just point-blank put Tyrion in his place. Last time you told me to do nothing and people died. I am going out there and I am going to save Jon. And how am I going to do it? Oh, well, I'll just ride my friggin' dragon, which I guess is also a troop transport. That thing is badass. I mean, we always knew, and even after watching it rip into the Lannisters, we said a couple weeks ago, hey, now that we've seen what it can do to the living, imagine what it's going to do to the dead. And I'll be honest, anyone who's been reading this book any length of time knows all the way back, Game of Thrones came out in 94, 95, I'll need to look that up at some time, have been waiting to see what happens when Dragonfire hits whites and others. Well, you know what happens? Dragons win. Fire burns, and oh my god. But alright, enough of that. Let's talk about the downsides so that we can end on the up notes. And that would be Sansa and Arya. Arya and Sansa. Last week we watched Littlefinger play around and convince Arya through trickery that Sansa was even worse than, let's be honest, Sansa's already kinda on the bad side. And it kind of annoys me that Littlefinger's pulling this off. There's part of me that says, we already had him put in his place by Bran. Bran, with that whole chaos is a ladder thing. Shouldn't Bran be coming up and being like, hey, you two, stop squabbling. He's the reason Dad's dead. He's an asshole. But, remember, Sansa actually warned Arya and Bran not to trust Littlefinger. But, for some reason, Arya thinks she knows more. And of course, they're playing up the sibling rivalry that they already had. The two of them already had problems, and Littlefinger knew that from Season 1. So now we see the two of them stand there, and we have to ask. So is Sansa trying to plot? Of course not really. But does she have backup plans? Probably. And then Sansa finding those faces at the end of the episode turns her against Arya too. Littlefinger couldn't have planned that, but he couldn't have had better luck falling in his lap. Let's be honest, Arya sounded like a sociopath. Well, Arya might actually be a sociopath. But at the end of the day, It's one of those cliche bad things that they say, women are catty, they can't get along, and sisters fight and argue. But there's another thing. See, I have a sister and a whole bunch of stepsisters, and I have a whole bunch of friends that are women. And yes, I totally admit there's the chance that women could be catty. But you know what else they can be? They can be sisters. The same way we have brothers, even that aren't actually brothers, that just became brothers in a foxhole, we have women that stand together. And I honestly think that as much as they're doing that with Jon, as much as they're doing that with Davos, they should be doing it with the Stark girls. They were both shaped by the tragedies in their lives. And yes, at the end of season 1, they were both there when Ned got decapitated. But season 1 them to season 7 them are vastly different. And you have to realize, something Sansa said is 100% true. I don't know if you could have survived what I went through. Of course, the reverse is true. I don't know if you could have survived what she went through. But that's just it. They survived going through what they did because of who they are. And both of them should be respecting the strength that comes from just being able to live through and push past this. But of course they're not. The show used a trope that I kinda like, too. Writing dialogue in groups is hard, because you need to remember who everyone is and give everyone a voice within the conversation. Now, some writers do this better than others, but one of the ways that you get around it is you pair them off. You sit there and you say, hey, we're going to put a conversation where Dany's talking to Tyrion, or we have a conversation where Jon's talking to Beric, or we have a conversation where the Hound is talking to Tormund, or we have a conversation where everyone's making fun of Gendry because he's the newest person here. And you know what? That works great. Because when you only have 2 people, it's easier to get across their personality traits. And this episode started off so strong with that. We had, I don't know, like every possible combination of the people going north. And at every turn, it made me love most of the characters more and more. I loved that Jon even was willing to give Longclaw back to Jorah. Hey, your dad thought you'd never come back, but here, you're back. And then boom, gotta love Jorah's answer. No, he gave the sword to you. Pass it on to your children someday. The same trick is even used with, like I said, Dany and Tyrion, and in the part that I wasn't too fond of, that's why Sansa and Arya were pretty much alone in Winterfell. Didn't it feel kind of weird that the 2 of them were walking around by themselves the whole time? It's to keep the dialogue between the 2 of them easier to write. If you watched my review of Defenders, you'll know that they created a pairing that I didn't even know I wanted, and now I want more of. However, unlike that, this show was full of pairings I've been looking for and waiting for. And let's not forget Flaming Swords. And, I mean, they started us off with a bear attack. An undead bear! I mean, come on! That is where all the special effects money needs to go. This sort of crazy, over-the-top fight sequence. 2 guys with flaming swords fighting. I mean, at this point, I know there are jokes on the internet about it, but point blank, this is a D&D game made into Westeros version. And let's be honest, these guys are all some of the most badass fighters. The only people who aren't here who I wish were because of badassery would be Brienne of Tarth and Jaime. If they were there, though, this maybe with Bronn, too. But that's okay, because that fight sequence with the other, when Jon killed him and then the other whites deactivated, is that a sign of things to come? Is that the weakness? Is that how we Borgify these guys? We sit there and we say, hey, each other you take out drops so many whites. I don't know. But if that's the case, we might actually stand a chance, which is pretty amazing, because, let's be honest, even while they were standing there, they didn't think they stood much of a chance. The Night's King was out in force, and I do have to question, I don't want to give it a major bad mark for this, but I do want to question how Dany got there so quickly, how fast Gendry got back to the wall, how fast the Raven flew to Dany, and then Dany flying with her dragon. But I guess none of that matters, because Dany to the rescue! Oh my god, it was awesome. It was exactly how I would have wanted to see it, except maybe with a little more time involved. But 3 dragons coming down, picking up them. And then we get the moment. The Night King is given a spear. And that spear pierces the hide of one of the dragons. To be honest, I'm not even 100% sure which dragon it was that died, except that it wasn't Balerion. It wasn't, no, not Balerion, it wasn't Drago. It was one of the other two. But it doesn't really matter, because once the spear hit, it pierced easily, and the flames that are inside the dragon ripped out and started eating it alive, and it fell into the snow and the ice, and then it dropped itself into the watery abyss below. If you thought this was bad before, Dany has every reason to want to slaughter the Night King now. He killed one of her children, but she doesn't even know the half of it. Because let's be honest, the worst thing wasn't that it died, it's that it's coming back. As soon as they dropped it, though, I knew it was coming. I knew because there was just no way that they were going to let next season be dragons versus non-dragons. Nope. What we got instead was the other dragging up the dragon. And then the reveal. When that blue eye opened, what were you thinking? Were you thinking, oh my god, next year's just going to be so amazingly badass? Or were you thinking, oh my god, they just went from having a fighting chance to, I'm back to not knowing how they're fighting the dead? And do you think it's mindless? Do you think it's still as smart as a beast? Do you think it's 100% under the Night King's control? My god, there's like a million questions we can ask. And each one of them just leads to the biggest question. What happens when there's a showdown? What happens when dragon goes against ice dragon? What happens when fire goes against ice? I mean, is the Night King going to ride that thing? Is it possible that anything could stand up against the necromancers now that that's the case? I'm sure I'll find my own problems with the episode upon second and third viewings, but for right now I'd like to see your opinions. What did you like and what didn't you like? Because point blank, with one episode to go, this is just amazingly knocking my socks off. And if you're liking what I'm doing and what I'm saying, hit that thumbs up button and share me with a friend. Share me on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Just help me grow the channel. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and enable alerts, because that'll help the channel grow too. Because I'm trying to build a community here. One where we can look at all the hows and the whys of story. But mostly so we can, at moments like this, just sit back and go, wow, there's one hell of an adventure going on here. I'm sure when Martin's book comes out, there'll be more to it. But now we have just a little bit more of the heart of this story. I hope you have a good night, and thanks for watching.